What's up, everyone? Welcome back to New Villa Garden. I have all the parts that we need for building the self-irrigating pot. So I've got, well, my trusty assistant there, Bree. I've got the parts that we need. I've got my morning coffee. I've got some tools that we're gonna need. So I'm excited for today. Let's get building. All right, so in the previous video, I showed you this pot. I already had this pot, so it's a 13-gallon pot that we're going to work with. I talked about the plan, and I'm going to put up a diagram here on screen. We talked about the plan, how we're going to build it, how the idea works, right? Self-irrigating pot, providing a constant supply of water to the soil. As I was getting ready to order the plant saucer, and in the previous video, we originally thought about the 14-inch. So I realized the saucer is about well, actually in the Amazon store, the photos, the images showed that the height was about almost 2 inches, like about 1.8, something like that, inches. It turns out actually the actual height for this one is 1.5, but this is a different saucer. But anyway, the original plan was to use the 14-inch saucer. And then I realized if the height of that saucer was almost 2 inches, so let's just say it's an inch and a half. And my original plan was to put that false bottom 3 inches from the bottom right there, right? So if that height is an inch and a half, so that means the actual false bottom would be just an inch and a half from the bottom of the pot. So that's not going to work, right? So it's going to be, that would be a little too low of a water reservoir than I want. That I would like. So I went with the 15-inch. So this is a 15-inch saucer instead. Like I said, the height here is about 1.5, 1.6. So it'll get stuck, right? If we put this in here, it's gonna get stuck like around 6 inches from the bottom. So that's a little too high. So that would take too much of the space to make it water reservoir, and that space will take from the actual soil volume, right? So that's a little too much than what I would like for the water reservoir. So as you can see here, the top portion of this saucer, there's like this lip goes outward. So if I cut this off, right, I think so around this, without this lip here, the diameter would be around 14.5 inches. So it's going to result in about 2.6 inches. This bottom would be about 2.6 inches from the bottom of the pot, right? So that would result in about 1 2/3 gallon of water reservoir, and leaving about 10.5 gallons of soil volume, I think. So I think that's the perfect measurement, and I think that's the perfect plan for what I want. So originally, what I was thinking was, so I'll cut a hole on this, put maybe like a plastic cup, use a plastic cup for the wicking part. But then I was at the dollar store the other day, and I found this. I think, I mean, you can use this. People use this probably for, like, I don't know, put keys in it, things like that. But you know, this is very porous, so water will just go through this. So I figured, you know, if I put soil in this and use this as the wicking basket, right, it works perfectly. And soil's not gonna come through, it's not gonna spill out of this, but water can easily, you know, get into here, and then the soil will wick it up to the soil on top. So I think this will work. So, but I'm gonna have to cut a hole here that's a little smaller than the top portion of this, so that it doesn't, you know, it doesn't fall through. All right, so those are the parts. Oh, and then I've got these. I got this PVC pipe, and this is interesting, actually, because if you'll see here, this is a 1 inch. It's a 1 inch PVC pipe, but it's a little more than an inch actually in diameter. So when I measured it, it's about, I don't know if that's normal for all like PVC pipes, but this is like about a little over an inch and an eighth in diameter, inside diameter, but the outside diameter is about an inch and a quarter. So I'm gonna use my hole drill or hole saw to cut that hole for this pipe. And then we have this flex tape. So I got the flex tape, and that will that will seal those holes at the bottom. So we make it waterproof. We prevent the water from leaking out, right? So it's not going to be much of a reservoir if it's if it's leaking. All right, and then finally I'm going to use my Dremel cutter to cut this lip off, and probably also to cut that hole for this wicking basket in the center. We'll let that dry out, and then we'll take them on both sides. All right, so what I did was I traced the outline of the top of this wicking basket that we're going to use. And then what I'm going to do is, using the Dremel tool, I'm going to cut like about maybe half an inch inside this perimeter, so that when we put this in, it's not going to completely fall through. I had to wear long sleeves because the plastic shavings are hitting my arm, and it's quite uncomfortable. Well, I guess picking this basket as kind of our wicking basket worked out for the better, because it's you know, it's pretty flexible. You cut the so I cut the hole just slightly smaller than the outline from the top here, and so it's just, you know, it's perfectly sitting right on top of that hole. And I think this will be exactly or very close to the bottom of the pot. Okay, so next thing we need to do is cut this lip off. All right, let's see how this fits into the pot. Ha, ha. I think that is perfect. All right, that's pretty good. It looks like the bottom is about 2 3/4 from the bottom, which means our wicking basket would be about maybe an eighth of an inch floating from the bottom of that pot. Next up, so we're gonna drill a hole for which the pipe is gonna go through. So somewhere on here, on the side. Okie dokie, we got our hole. Let's see if this is big enough. I might have to sand that hole. Sand this with the Dremel tool. All right, so there you go. I got the hole big enough for the pipe to go through, but I think I went a little bit too far. I got a little bit too excited. So, see there's a gap. Normally, I mean, it's probably not gonna matter that much. Soil is not gonna push through that, I don't think. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not decided yet, but if we have to, we can seal this with some silicone anyway. So, perfect. That's it. Now, next thing we're going to do is cut this pipe to the right length, and maybe instead of poking holes in here, I'm just going to cut this end off at an angle so that when we stick it in to the pot, it's not gonna be flush to the bottom. So there's always an opening here because it'll be cut at an angle. So there's always an opening so the water will always flow through. So that's about, maybe we'll cut it at about 18 inches. So it'll be sticking about almost 2 inches above the pot. It's always to cut it a little longer than what you want to, because if it's too long, you can still cut it, right? Cut it shorter. But if you cut it too short, then it's going to be useless. Now, to cut the pipe, you can either use, I mean, the PVC is pretty soft, so you can use like a hacksaw, probably any kind of saw. But I would cut it with a hacksaw if I didn't have a Dremel tool. But there you go. So that's perfect. And then I'm just gonna cut this at an angle. And there you have it. So that will be our pipe. So this beveled end is gonna go into the pipe. So, you know, whether it goes in that way, you know, regardless if it's, you know, regardless of the orientation of the pipe, it's never gonna be flush against the bottom. So there will always be an opening, so water will always flow through, and it's never gonna clog up. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna fill the wicking basket with soil designed to hold moisture in it, and so that's what's gonna wick water better. If you use well draining soil in your wicking basket, it's not gonna wick effectively. I don't even know if it's probably gonna wick, but it's not gonna be as effective or as good as, you know, pure soil. So without perlite, so don't mix any perlite into it or any you know, anything that makes it well draining. So it'll be compact soil in here, plus also the soil around here up to this level, so which is about an inch from the false bottom here, so that when it wicks the whole thing, and then from there we'll have the well draining soil right on top. All right, so that fits very nicely in here. So next thing we're gonna do, and the last thing we're gonna do, is plug these holes up. So I'm gonna plug these holes up, and then drill a couple more holes on the side here, so that we're replacing these, right? So it doesn't overflow. So the reservoir will always have a maximum. So we're gonna measure where that bottom is for that false bottom, and then drill a hole right underneath it here. 2 inches and 5/8 is where we will drill our hole at. All right, so there's our new drainage hole, and we only need one really for overflow. So what I'm doing here is just cutting the flex tape into like 1 square inch pieces, so like that, and then putting it on top of each hole. All right, so I think we're ready. So that's pretty much it. We're pretty much done with everything, with all the parts. Now, you know, I'm an engineer. I like testing stuff. So once we have the soil in here, we won't really know like how things are working and how, you know, if the drainage is working well, you know, all of that stuff. So I'd like to test it now without the soil, you know, so at least we'll see how well the water gets into the reservoir, how well the water seeps into this wicking basket of ours, you know, all of that stuff. So without the soil, we'll be able to see that clearly, right? All right, so let's test it. And so before I put the wicking basket in, I want to see, you know, looking at it this way without the wicking basket, you can see exactly how the water would fill in. So here we go. So I'm putting the water in through the through that pipe. Right? I don't know if you can see it. Let's move it over here. There you go. Put that in. I'm just holding it in place so I can look around the pot, see if anything's leaking. Whoops. Anyway, I hope you can see that on the camera where it's filling water. You can see it through the center, hopefully. All right, so now you'll be able to see as I put in some water here. There's the drainage at the bottom, and as you can see there, it's starting to drain out when it reaches that level. So that's about 2 5/8 high. I guess you can just say 2.5 inches high. And then that there is that's the height of the water. Yeah, that's the height of the water when it started to drain out. Height of the water in the wicking basket. And as you can see, even though the water is not it's not going all the way up to the top of the wicking basket or the bottom of the false bottom of the tray, the saucer. You can see that the wicking basket actually, so it also wicks the water in itself, right? So you can see the top portion is now wet as well. So one thing I realized is that we were missing an indicator in the tube to tell us, you know, how high the water volume is in the reservoir at the bottom of the pot. So initially, what I had in mind was using a cork, and then like something like a stick. This is a driveway marker made of fiberglass. I thought this might work, so I tried it. I used the cork, but this is synthetic cork that we had just laying around in the kitchen drawer. So I used this, but it turns out the fiberglass is a little too heavy for it, so it would not float in the tank at the bottom of the pot. So that didn't work. And then I looked around in my garage and found an unused pool noodle. So what I did here is, first of all, cut it to length, just a little bit longer than the pipe, and then I cut a strip out of it, just tiny sliver like this, and as you can see, it's flimsy, but it actually works. It gets the job done. So it goes in the pipe like that, and then that'll just float on top of the water. So I cut this exactly to length as the pipe, which means when the water is low, when the tank is empty, the foam will just be like right at the level of the pipe. So if the tank is full, or has water in it, then this should be sticking out of the pipe somewhat, like that, and here I'll show you, give you a quick look at it. So there you can see the pipe the foam just floats on top right there. So that's where it hits the bottom, so it's just about at the level of the pipe. So that's pretty much it that I wanted to show and test for this video. Next video we're gonna put in soil. So like I said, it's gonna be a potting mix. I'm gonna show everything that I'm gonna do in the next video. So we're gonna test it as well with the potting soil and without the draining soil yet, without the well draining soil, just the potting soil for wicking. So we'll see how that works as well in the next video. So thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed this, I hope that you'll please click the like button and follow or subscribe to New Villa Garden. Thanks for watching and joining us on this journey of transforming our tiny backyard into our own little desert oasis. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.